Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with Moor Insights Strategy, and we are back for episode 10 of the Data Center Podcast. Boys, we made it 10 episodes, and we have not been canceled yet. I'm very excited about that. So, who says alternative media isn't awesome? But hey, if it's your first time on the Data Center Podcast, we have All-Star Matt, Will, and Paul, and we're covering the weeks, actually the last 2 weeks, top data center stories, conversations. We talking compute, AI, security, storage, networking, operations, data management, AI, quantum, and a lot more. Quick disclaimer, we are going to talk about public companies. Don't take anything we say as investment advice. If you saw my investment portfolio the last 5 years, you would just run away and not do anything that might be inferred. Please seek a professional out there. We've got a great show for you. We're talking VMware, NVIDIA, SentinelOne, IBM. We're talking about quantum enchiladas too, which we all know has to be a Paul Smith-Goodson topic. He always brings it high order credibility and information here. And we're going to be talking too about COBOL to Java via, you guessed it, generative AI. Imagine that, talking generative AI. Gentlemen, how you doing?
Awesome.
Yeah. TGIF.
Totally, TGIF. We've got 3 podcasts, actually 4. So it's kind of podcast day. I think I'm on my 4th cup of coffee. I don't have the jitters yet, but I'm hoping if I down maybe one more of those, it'll do it. I'm big into electrolytes now, staying fully hydrated.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Was something wrong with the temperature gauge this morning?
It felt actually wonderful this morning.
It started with a 7.
Yeah.
Which
crazy.
I had to get out my sweater, right? Maybe put a scarf on. Anyways, let's jump in here. So, hey, unless you're living under a rock, VMware had its. By the way, I want to call it VMworld. It's so hard.
Yes.
But it's VMware Explore. Made that mistake a couple times doing videos when I was there. And we all attended one way, shape, or form, either in person, or remote. So let's dive in. I'm going to give Matt the first crack at this. What happened here, Matt?
There's a lot. It's funny because it seems like every year at VMware Explore, sorry, not VMworld, VMware Explore.
I'm gonna fire the operations guy. Such a loser. So bad.
It seems like every year there's so much news, it's almost overwhelming. And I was thinking about it. I'm going to take a little bit longer on my part, if that's okay. But I was thinking about it.
Please.
I first used VMware back in its VM Workstation back in 2002, and it was to do QA work for client acceptance in pharmaceutical software many years ago, right? And you forget that they went from this company that did these little kind of nichey things to virtual servers to now they're essentially the control plane for the data center, right? I mean, virtually everything you do in the data center, you're using VMware tools to manage, or VMware has a solution for it. And I think that's why it can be so overwhelming, is kind of when you think about it in the big picture. And that also causes, because of the size of VMware and how present it is in the data center, that means every single OEM, every server vendor, every IT solutions vendor, everybody out there also has major announcements associated with it. So trying to cover it as an analyst can be kind of difficult and overwhelming. Few things I found interesting, maybe not so interesting. The first thing is, they controlled on everything. They announced on everything, right? From the edge to the cloud to the core data center. Edge orchestration, edge to cloud orchestration, virtualization orchestration, container orchestration, right? Everything that you can imagine as far as data goes, creating, touching, managing, moving, there was an announcement around. The things that stuck out to me, vSAN Max, which I thought was really interesting, which is the independent scaling of storage. Coincidentally, Pure Software had a huge announcement around Pure Store Block as well, which enables independent scaling of storage in Azure environments for the AVS, Azure for VMware Services solution. Vico or Veco, I'm not sure how they pronounce it, the VMware Edge to Cloud Orchestration. Really cool tool. This is one of those, this was bigger than just orchestration. I like the fact that they went and they did tailored kind of reference architectures for certain verticals, retail, manufacturing, industrial. Thought that was a really smart thing to do. They're leveraging their partnerships with Lenovo, Dell, and HPE. And they did some things I thought were really just kind of, you might think of them as basic, but they're so helpful to IT, like the ability to manage, to instantly update all of your edge environments and the devices on those edge environments instantaneously through the click of a button. I think it's in tech preview now, but just really kind of basic blocking and tackling that takes managing edge environments, managing cloud environments from literally weeks to implement updates to hours or maybe even minutes. Really cool story. I like what they're doing with Tanzu and Aria. So they're taking, for those that don't know, Tanzu is kind of how you manage application development within a Kubernetes environment and kind of orchestrate your Kubernetes environment. Aria is kind of the multi-cloud management. I love that they're starting to merge functionality. There is a natural integration point for cloud and cloud native applications. VMware seems to be getting that, and they're driving further integration of these tool sets, which I think is a really smart move. I think app dev is, the DevOps folks are going to love it. And I think the platform engineers are going to love it as well. And the last thing, because I could talk forever.
Yeah, so we could do an entire show on this, but
I know.
Maybe we'll stretch this thing out.
So real quick, ESXi, lifecycle management. What I talked about for their edge environment management, they're bringing to ESXi as well. So if you're a really big company and you have a whole bunch of locations and separate VMware environments, you're able to integrate those into one big kind of cluster, if you will, and push your updates out to tens of thousands of servers instantaneously. So love what they're doing, and I like the direction they're going of kind of staying on that journey for all their customers, where their customers are in their cloud migrations. I'll stop there because I know there's a lot more to talk to. So
there's so much we could talk to, and quite frankly, I'm trying to get through the content already. But hey, let's go with Will. How about that? VMware been slowly getting into both security and networking. I've been covering NSX for a while, and imagine that a company with networking also doing security, huh?
Yeah, that's a crazy concept.
Shocker.
Right? Yeah, shocker. So I'll be succinct. So there was a lot to unpack from a networking and security standpoint. Pat, you mentioned NSX. So they announced NSX Plus. And as you can imagine, there's some new enhancements and features with that cloud-delivered networking and security solution. But what I found really interesting from a networking perspective was their announcement of a private cellular network offering. And if our viewers and listeners don't know this, VMware has had a lot of depth in the telco industry for many years, and they actually have their own converged 4G and 5G core. And so they've announced finally a private networking offering. They're partnered with Federated Wireless. Federated is very well known. They focus on the RAN and all the integration. And so Federated is going to be a partner, and they're going to come together to deliver this service. Now, it's a little late with respect to other offerings in the market from Nokia and from Cradlepoint, Ericsson. So it'll be interesting to see how successful they are with it. But this is something that's been in pilot for quite some time, but they finally took their apps off at VMware Explore this year.
Good stuff, Will. I appreciate you cranking out that article as quickly you did as well. Super impressive.
No, thank you. And then I'm going to hit security real quick, Pat. So something to note within their Carbon Black portfolio, extended detection response is really red hot right now in the cybersecurity world. Basically, what VMware announced were some extensibility, functions to that allows now their XDR platform to operate as a cloud-native application platform protection service. And so they're extending that, given, modern architectures and cloud native application development. This is something that I've written about in the past and actually have published a white paper, worked with Cisco on that around Cisco Live back in June with Panoptica. But it's great to see that they're bringing that level of depth within their XDR platform.
Yeah, it's crazy how much these guys are doing. You probably also saw the private 5G stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
My apologies. I was confusing that with SASE. So good stuff. And there's more. We're not done yet. Paul, for the most part, the company has stayed off the sidelines on all this AI talk. But boom, there were two major announcements for AI at the conference.
Yeah, the whole world is turning into a big generative AI model, I think.
I don't know. We might be, Paul. We might be bots. So don't give away anything.
I'm gonna check.
Yeah.
Maybe even surprise yourself. But the VM AI part of this, the product name is VMware Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA.
Shocker.
Isn't that a shocker?
With who? Okay.
Yeah, it's a little company, NVIDIA.
Yeah.
It'll basically allows enterprises, to build, train, deploy GenAI models for applications that are customized using their own data or whatever they want to use. It's a full stack platform. It's got the GenAI software, to build and train and customize right out of the box. And it's built on the VMware Cloud Foundation and optimized for AI with GenAI software and accelerated compute from NVIDIA, of course. But the whole idea is that it allows customers to build GenAI wherever they want to. But the idea behind it is that when they use proprietary business data to modify these models, there's some concern that they're open to risk and they could be compromised. So this kind of locks it up. The Private AI Foundation allows the customers to train and deploy a model wherever they want to. They can use Falcon, Llama 2, Mosaic, the OpenAI models from Hugging Face, or they can use their own if they want to. So it's got a lot of flexibility. The developers have got access to NVIDIA's AI Workbench, which is pretty comprehensive. It allows the developers to build and test or customize these pre-trained GenAI models. It also has NeMo on the platform. NeMo is the NVIDIA's cloud native. It's got end-to-end framework. And they can build and customize and deploy their own GenAI models if they want to. So NeMo kind of acts like basically kind of like the operating system of the AI platform. So pretty flexible, a lot of capability, and going to do well. It's by the way, I don't know if I mentioned or not, it won't be available until next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I couldn't nail down an availability for that. And the one thing I want to point out, that was good analysis, Paul. There's two things they announced around this. So they announced an open source framework, that includes a lot of other companies, including Intel, AMD, and of course, NVIDIA, of how you can stitch this together on your own. And then they came out with a framework just with NVIDIA hardware, right? And frameworks and CUDA and all the magic goodness that NVIDIA has invested in software. Now, the with NVIDIA leads me 100% to believe that in the future, we're going to see with Intel, we're going to see with AMD. Yeah. And quite frankly, and we might talk about this 27 other times, is the world needs more competition to make this go around. NVIDIA has done an incredible amount of work to move this forward. I especially like the way that VMware talked about the differences between doing this in the public cloud and versus on-prem. And by the way, I think we're going to see orchestrations where it doesn't matter where you run the workload. I think I like the way that they pointed out how generative AI is different from machine learning and deep learning, and showing how much more information you have to do, you have to work with. This is no longer just training a machine learning model on how to, identify objects and then do something afterwards. By the way, that's not easy, but when you're an enterprise and you're trying to connect, ERP data with financial data, with HRM data, with CRM data, all of this proprietary data that's in your enterprise, are you going to shove all that into the public cloud?
Right.
And I think it's interesting. IaaS growth has come down, way off its growth rates. I think AWS is 12% this last quarter. Interestingly enough, VMware Cloud was 30% growth. Different numbers, like law of large numbers kicks in there. But, the thing that I'm looking for, and I don't have an opinion just yet, shocking, I know, but is generative AI going to be the thing that gets enterprises to put their data in the public cloud? Or is this going to be the milestone or event that drives on-prem data center? What I do know is the OEMs own the edge, right? And that's where I know a tremendous amount of inference will be done. Now, so far, I don't think anybody's figured out how to do generative AI inference on the edge, right? Because you're looking for, servers that could be the size of a pizza box that are nailed to the wall of a McDonald's drive-through entrance, right? We're not talking about raised floor tile that might be at Walmart, which, by the way, people call the edge too.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, great discussion. I think VMware Explorer is going to be the hallmark card that just keeps on giving. We could probably talk about this a ton, but hey, we invested almost 10 minutes more in this. But let's move on to a very serious topic, and that is a new quantum-enabled Enchilada Trap. Paul, one of your hallmarks of your podcast and writing is having a little fun with this. What on earth is this about?
It's actually the name. Sandia Labs came up with they built a new trap, ion trap. And it'll hold 200 trapped ions. And they named it the Enchilada Trap. The only problem is it looks like a taco to me, but I'll go with enchilada for them. So
hey, can you talk real quick for those who are not quantum enabled at this point? Can you talk about what is a trap?
Yeah, a trap is holds the ions in electric fields and stuff and controls them so that they can be operated with quantumly, so to speak. This trap also has like 5 different zones for trapping so that they can isolate the ions, actually qubits, and perform the operations on them without affecting anything else. They have to shuttle them back and forth into these traps, which causes another problem because anytime you start shuttling ions back and forth, if you have too much motion, then it heats them up and they lose their fidelity. So, but anyway, it's got 5 traps, so it's going to be interesting. I looked trying to find. They've got an existing trap they call a Roadrunner. I couldn't find how many ions that holds, but it's going to be used at Sandia and Duke University, of course. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. It's not going to be to the point where they can perform quantum advantage and out-compute supercomputers right now, but it'll allow us to use larger algorithms and do some more testing that way. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be fun.
You heard it here first on the Moor Insights and Strategy Data Center Podcast. The new Enchilada Trap by Sandia Labs. Your tax dollars at work. This is great. Hey, let's go into something a little bit different here. ARM begins its public offering process with the F1. By the way, it's funny, initial They've been public before. Is it an IPO? And what's and what the heck is an F1 versus an S1?
Yeah.
Matt, we'll go with you on this one.
Yeah. So this was I put this up. You might have some thoughts on it too, Pat. But so ARM is, everyone knows ARM, right? They're based out of the UK. So F1 versus S1. We're just talking about prior to the show. S1 is for domestic companies, and F1s are for foreign companies that want to list on an American stock exchange. And so ARM filed the paperwork, the F1 on Monday. I think it's early September. They're looking to go public. And I think Citibank is the underwriter for it, from what I saw, which I thought was interesting. But the reason I bring this up is I was poking through their F1, kind of trying to get a little bit more information around anchor investors, because there's a lot of chat around who's really going to be driving a lot of this IPO. And while that information wasn't in there, something I thought was very interesting was in there, and that is ARM is claiming a 10% market share of the cloud CPU space. And so for those who are just listening at home or just starting to follow ARM at home, they entered the cloud space. Pat, when did Graviton launch? 2019, was it?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Already on the third generation here. But yeah, I think it was 2019. I think it was the landing zone. And before that, it was Nitro, where they had about 200,000 Nitro surrounding its x86 servers at AWS.
So it's amazing to me, though, that within a few years they've gone from effectively 0 to 10% of the cloud market share when it comes to CPUs, right? And that's anchored by Ampere and what Ampere has done with Oracle Cloud, with Azure, with GCP, and in China as well. But I'm kind of, I've been sitting back, and just like you didn't have an opinion on what's gonna in the previous topic, and kind of what's going to happen with GenAI on the edge. I don't have an opinion on whether this is a great thing for ARM, but I just find it fascinating that here's a company with that has shipped 250 billion parts to date. 36 billion they're estimating, or 30 billion they're estimating they shipped in 2023 or fiscal 2023. Been around since 1990, refiling for an IPO or going public again. Does this? Do you think, Pat, this bolsters them in the cloud space? Does it? Is this a great thing for them, or is this just a who cares kind of thing?
Well, I think I mean, look at the amount of capitalization that they're going to get, right? I mean, we thought $40 billion was big with NVIDIA buying them. Mm-hmm. Now you're looking at 70, 100 billion. I mean, it's massive. And even though the parent company SoftBank is going to keep a big ownership position, it's dollars that they can potentially use to buy companies and buy capabilities. And I think the numbers, even though the growth numbers are a little bit skewed, if you look at the top line, they have grown. But what happened is they had made huge investments into IoT, and then they essentially unraveled it all, right? So they have this huge growth in the data center, which, if you guys remember 12 years ago, right, it was 32-bit ARM processors that had no consistent boot process, kind of had compatible operating systems, no middleware, and a few applications, right, like Nginx. So now, I mean, it's amazing, right? You have consistency in boot. You have operating systems, middleware, applications, application tools, dev kits, and for me, ARM arrived in the data center with AWS, right, and then moved up with Ampere, and I think the sky is the limit. And then you had Apple come in and show and reinforce what I've been teaching people for years. It's not about the instruction set, Don't confuse with a performance and efficiency with an instruction set.
Right.
It's about the developer and the architect who can put this together. And by the way, it takes about 10 years if you want to roll a new ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we are today. My expectation is that ARM is going to continue to take market share. I do believe that both Azure and Google are doing first-party designs for the data center that is ARM based.
Mm-hmm.
And I base that nothing other than they're hiring CPU architects.
Left and right.
You don't hire CPU architects in a company where you're going to be buying processors. Okay. And when you look at the tool set makers of Cadence and Synopsys and the ability to take IP directly from design, pull it in and take it all the way down to the foundry. I mean,
yeah.
It cost me about $1 billion to roll a new processor when we did Opteron back in 2001.
Yeah.
And now it takes about $50 million to put together an SoC. Now your BOM costs are a lot higher because you're probably pulling a lot of the IP off the shelf, but that's why the hyperscalers can get in this and make things happen. On the PC side with Windows, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably not a very good deal that ARM does with Apple, and I don't think it's driving a tremendous amount of revenue on the architectural license. But when I look at what Qualcomm is cooking up with its ACPC and its new Orion chip that, by the way, it is the ex-Apple architects who brought the M1 and the M2 and the M2 derivatives to the table.
Yeah.
I believe that will change the game in PCs, and that's not even being factored in here. I like the leadership too. You know, Rene Haas, ex NVIDIA, right? I've known him for probably 15 years so far. He's a pro. He knows how to run a company, very serious. And quite frankly, when I first started researching ARM, probably 15 years ago, when I was still at AMD, I couldn't figure out why they didn't monetize more. It's like, wait a second, you're basically in every phone on the planet, and you're doing this for pennies on your licenses. I couldn't fully understand how such an important company wasn't worth a lot, right? And it's because, hey, they were the friendly people. And I do understand that ARM is rubbing people the wrong way, who used to be very happy with their super low prices. But I think they were leaving money on the table, and it's no way to run a business. So I think ARM is adding a lot more value now, spending a lot more, particularly in the data center and into the PC.
I think there is a huge opportunity. It's funny because we always talk about ARM in the context of the cloud when it comes to the data center, but we forget they have a decent presence on the HPC, the Super 500 list, and they have some amazing parts. We also forget that this thing called Grace Hopper from NVIDIA is also ARM based. I mean, there is a huge growth potential for them across all segments of the data center.
Yeah. EdgeQ, a company that I've spoken with, they're doing a base station on a chip. They're using RISC and ARM in a very innovative architectural design. So, yeah, it seems to me that, ARM's got a lot of upside here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the RISC-V cool thing that they can do is you can put special instructions into a native design. ARM has a program that they rolled out a couple of years to do that. But, I expect RISC-V to get a lot of the lower end business. I mean, we're looking at a hard drive controller that doesn't run a high level operating system. I totally get it. And I think the Chinese and even some of the Western hyperscalers are very interested in RISC-V as well. But I think they can both grow here. And again, I think that I'm very, very bullish about this one. And the difference between 40 billion and 70 billion, I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome.
That's a lot.
If you're Masa-san, Anyways, hey, let's move to the next topic here, and this is SentinelOne mulling a sale. Wait, Will, weren't they like the high flyer a while back? Like, what in earth is going on here? So is this rumor? Is this, what's happening here?
So, so SentinelOne, they're an Israeli-based endpoint security company. They compete with folks like CrowdStrike. And what's happened, Pat, is, if you recall, when SentinelOne launched their IPO, it was the biggest IPO in cybersecurity history. Yeah. And, flash forward, over the last 2 years, its stock value has lost 80%. And
Ouch.
I dug into it, and what a lot of sort of buy side analysts, I'm not a financial analyst, but sometimes I like to play one on TV and on this podcast. But what a lot of folks have surmised is that their pricing model, like ARM in its early days, they're leaving too much money on the table, and so investors haven't been very kind to them, and so they're in a situation now where the company is, only, valued at about $5 billion. I mean, and $5 billion is a lot of money, but it's certainly not the valuation it had, at its IPO. And so it also sort of gets me thinking, there's this momentum within a lot of organizations to move away from point solutions down to sort of a consolidated, sort of approach to be able to control OpEx and manage spend and that sort of thing. So I'm wondering if SentinelOne is falling victim to that. Sounds like you might agree with that, Derek.
Yeah, it's, we saw it with Cisco, we're seeing it with Microsoft, where what happened is these, quote unquote, best in breed point products, you put more work into integrating them. Yeah. And by the time you've integrated them, you're 3 revisions back, and it's no longer best of breed. We're seeing this with observability as well in the data space, and we've been obviously seeing this in personal productivity forever, which is why Microsoft is still king, and there's only two people left here. It's also this idea that, hey, when is something a product and when is it just a feature in a bundle, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of like we saw VMware bring out ransomware protection, right? Yeah. Which is like feature, product, right. Teams adds chat or, something like that. And how does this look, versus Slack or something like that? But it's amazing. I mean, the company is literally down 63% off of its public offering. What a disaster.
It's a complete disaster. Train wreck of epic proportions, given how they were so ballyhooed I hit their website and it's like, it's AI powered endpoint protection. Well, that's a whitewash. Everyone's claiming that, right? So you got to get a little more clever with your positioning and your go-to-market, and certainly with your pricing strategy. And it sounds like all of those things are off for SentinelOne right now.
Yeah, by the way, like you said, we're not equity analysts. We're not VCs, but we do like to pretend to be that on TV. But these types of things are important because we do see the market reaction, which quite frankly, over the long term is customer reaction. Yeah. To this whole thing. I think these guys get bought by private equity. They get stripped clean. Products get discontinued, and they get sold to somebody for a profit. So,
yeah.
Hey, last topic, folks. Thanks for hanging with us. We're talking the new versus the old, GenAI and COBOL. I mean, Paul, this has got to be Paul Smith Goodson, okay? Because he always brings it with some of the wackadoodle stuff. So
hey, there's nothing more interesting than COBOL.
No, I love COBOL. I get reminded of COBOL like every 20 years, on kind of what's going on. And
you were due today, Pat, right?
COBOL is actually a big problem for the industry. It's about $100 billion problem. If you tried to take COBOL and reprogram it with programmers, it would run up in the billions. So IBM was working on this a couple of years ago. I wrote an article in Forbes about the problem and how IBM was attacking it. And at the time,
Well,
they were
what
going
is
to
the
use,
hey Paul, real quick? What is the problem? Is it that the programmer, the person who wrote it, is retired or
there's
dead?
several problems. I mean, COBOL's not as efficient as it used to be. A lot of the original programmers have either died or retired, so they don't have the resources. New people don't like to work on it for obvious reasons. So it's kind of it's just kind of been hanging around and being tolerated, but they do want to convert it. Um, so anyway, they've got originally they were going to use CodeNet to try and do the conversion, and it looked like it would do the job. It would just take quite a while. But now since generative AI has come along, I mean, that can do about anything. So IBM's AI products are WatsonX.ai, WatsonX.data, and WatsonX.governance. So they're going to use WatsonX.ai to run this WatsonX code assistance. And that's going to be a product to try and develop to do the translation of code. This new program can handle, I think it's like 115 different languages it can use to program into whatever you want. So when they trained it, it took 1.5 trillion tokens to train it. So that's quite a bit. I mean, for a language model, a token is part of a word, so you can kind of guess. A token in programming languages is part of a string. So, So anyway, it should be interesting. When I was writing this article, I talked to Dr. Puri, which he was the one that was working on CodeNet, and I asked him the question. I said, "Do you ever expect CodeNet AI to be able to program itself?" And he basically said, "I expect it to be able to self-learn, but it's going to be years and years before it's able to do its own programming." So that was in 21.
Yeah.
And here we are now. How's going to do it?
Oh, I love it. This is almost a follow-up discussion, which it's great to see what was said in the past. By the way, the interesting part, I love picking up old headlines of old magazines and newspapers to see what was said. And, the death of comes to mind, right? In 1985, desktop publishing came out. It was going to be the death of creatives, right? And then PowerPoint was then again gonna put another. Remember Harvard Graphics, you guys? And then now, right, with generative AI, we have Adobe Firefly, where you can have a picture of a sunset, and you basically type in, "Hey, I'd like to have a blue background with clouds," and it just does it, right? So, and we saw the same thing in programs. So it didn't kill the creativity business; it just made everybody more creative.
Right.
And then with programming, if you remember, even languages like Fortran and Pascal were going to kill the programmer because they're so easy compared to machine language and COBOL, right? And then what happened? Oh, then we had IDEs. IDEs were really going to kill the programmer, right? We're not going to need as many programmers. So here we are in 2023. We're short about 50% on the amount of programmers we need. AI and new capabilities rarely kill stuff when they let more people do more.
Right.
And this is why I'm so skeptical on this. We're going to lose so many jobs with generative AI. Yeah. The one example that comes to mind where we did lose jobs, we didn't refill it, is when we moved. I was born in Ohio. I grew up in Ohio in the Rust Belt, where a lot of manufacturing jobs, automotive, steel, plastics, went from the Cleveland area and the Toledo area and the Dayton area to either Asia or it went south, right? And there was no reskilling. And that's why I'm not surprised that Dayton, Ohio is the most heroin addicted city in the United States, right? And it had so many issues, so many drug problems. So there are elements where we screw up progress, but generative AI helping to do things better, I don't think it's going to be as big of a net job loss as we see. quite frankly, a lot of these people don't want to even work these jobs. We can't hire people to do some of these jobs that generative AI does. So this is just yet another example here. Technologically, the COBOL to Java is COBOL you can only run on certain programs. If I have a Java application, I can run that on freaking anything. Okay. Now I can run it on something, but don't confuse that you're going to get the same uptime as, let's say, not running it on a mainframe, right? An IBM mainframe. Even AWS has tried to take the IBM mainframe out, and they just gave up. Okay. I've talked to one bank in 12 years that has actually completely gotten off a mainframe.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's so hard is not just, oh, it's locked in and the programmer died, right? It's because in the Western worlds, we have what's called the 11 millisecond rule. That's for the US, that a financial transaction has to take less than 11 milliseconds. And if it doesn't take 11, you get fined. Okay. And also the 7 nines as well. So you might be thinking, boy, IBM, why would you ever want to do this? You're going to get crushed. No, this is running COBOL applications either on Z mainframes or Power, but on Java, where you have 1,000 times more programmers.
The scariest part is that most of COBOL is on government machines.
That is crazy. By the way, the whole Southwest thing debacle they were blaming on a mainframe, it was actually on a Sun Spark box running COBOL.
Really?
Running COBOL applications.
Not Windows 90, not a Windows 95 old Dell PC. Like when it was great. Saturday Night Live did a lampoon, and they did a fake Southwest Airlines commercial, and they pointed to the Windows 95 OS.
No, I love that. No, isn't that great? I love to see where it hasn't booted into Windows. It's on DOS, right? one of these systems. But hey, I digress. Guys, good show.
Yeah.
Really good show. I feel like we're getting better at this. We haven't been canceled yet for what we said in prior episodes. Never use the P word though, okay? Because use the P word, we're gonna get deprioritized in the YouTube algorithm. That's why I never talk about the dark years back there. And by the way, we'll get a special link that says for access to P, information, go here. But anyways, great job, guys. Hey, if you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. We're here every other Friday at 10:30 a.m. Central. So tune in. Hey, you want to reach out? We want feedback. Like I've always said, give the positive feedback to me and all the negative to my besties here, or just Will. By the way, and Will, congratulations, dude. Number 3 ranked analyst in the entire freaking world. Man, I'm like looking over my back, like, oh man.
It's really humbling, Pat. I give you a lot of credit as a mentor over the last several years, and
nice.
I learned from everyone here on this podcast, and I learned from everyone, with the firm and within the industry as well. So humbled and honored. Now the challenge is maintenance and passing up Daniel Newman.
Yeah, knocked up number 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
I may or may not have gotten a message from Daniel Newman, but I cannot confirm or deny, because the first thing everybody wants to know is, oh, you must be juicing the numbers. Like, well, Will has actually picked up his writing game.
Yeah,
and these are the swim lanes he covers. And it was Black Hat, which means anybody with a pulse who covers security wants to know what Will is saying about security, even though Black Hat, I hear, was a yawner.
It was a snoozer, man. I couldn't even find 500 words to write on Forbes, unfortunately. But I shared some insights over Twitter or X or whatever we call that platform these days.
Exactly. By the way, I did. Yeah, don't do this. But by the way, you say it's on X, and somebody does a search on X, and stuff you don't want to know about pops up. So, that happened. I overheard somebody talking about that a couple days ago. I have a hard time just not calling it Twitter, but whatever it is, I like Twitter. My brain operates at that character mode, right? And I dig it. Anyways, great stuff, guys. I'm going to be out on the road for a couple weeks. Gosh, I've got Google Cloud Next coming up. I have Intel Innovation, Oracle Cloud World. Microsoft's doing an event that same week in New York. So yeah, back on the road. Back on the road, guys.
Right
Yeah.
on.
All right. Take care.
See you guys.